My father ignored me for years in his real estate empire, while he treated me as invisible. I was secretly building my own $1 million firm. And when he found out at a gala, his face said it all. I'm 32 years old. I work in real estate, and for the last 7 years, I've been living a double life that neither my family nor anyone in my close circle really knew about. I guess I should start from the beginning, back when I still believed that someday my father would see me as something more than the invisible middle daughter. My name is Lillian Whitmore, and yes, I'm a Whitmore, as in Whitmore Enterprises, the real estate empire that dominates half of Chicago. But being a Whitmore never meant the same thing for me as it did for my brother Vincent or even my younger sister Stella. I grew up in one of those families where money was never a problem, but emotional attention was distributed completely unequally. You know, like those dysfunctional family dynamics you see in movies, but worse because it's your actual life. My father, Frederick Whitmore, built his empire from scratch in the 80s and 90s, and by the time I was born in 93, he was already a legend in Chicago's real estate world. Vincent was born first, obviously, the golden heir, the prince of the kingdom. And then I came along 3 years later, and then Stella another 4 years after that. Vincent was always the future of the company, the one who was going to take the Whitmore name to new heights, blah blah blah. Stella was the baby, the adored princess who could do whatever she wanted because she was daddy's favorite, and I was there in the middle, like present but not really seen, you know what I mean? For as long as I can remember, family dinners were basically business meetings in disguise, where my father and Vincent talked about properties, contracts, urban development zones, and I'd try to participate, but it was like I was talking to a wall. I remember perfectly this one dinner when I was like 17, maybe 18, where I mentioned that I'd been reading about the investment potential in certain South Side neighborhoods that were starting to gentrify, and my father literally interrupted me, mid-sentence, to ask Vincent about a contract he was negotiating. He didn't even look at me. Vincent laughed and said something like, "Lily always trying to sound smart?" And everyone laughed except me. I just sat there feeling like I was invisible, like my words had no weight, like it didn't matter what I said because they'd already decided I wasn't part of the company's future. The thing is, I loved real estate as much as Vincent, probably more, because he saw it as his birthright, while for me it was something I was genuinely passionate about. I studied finance at Northwestern, graduated with honors, did internships at real estate investment firms outside Chicago, because I knew they'd never give me a chance at Whitmore Enterprises. Every time I tried to talk to my father about working at the family business, he'd pat me on the head, like literally treated me like I was 12 years old, and tell me not to worry, that Vincent would handle everything, that I could get involved in the social events or the family foundation if I wanted to do something. As if I were Stella, who honestly was happy going to galas and planning charity events. There's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't my thing. It wasn't what I was passionate about. The moment that changed everything happened like 7 years ago, when I was 25. My father had organized a strategic meeting at Whitmore Enterprises' main office, one of those big meetings with all the vice presidents and directors, and for some reason he invited me. I thought, finally, he's taking me seriously. I showed up prepared. I'd been studying the market, had ideas, concrete proposals. The meeting started and they were discussing expanding into the luxury condo market in the West Loop, and I saw a perfect opportunity to mention my research on how to diversify into mixed-use commercial properties that were doing really well in other cities. I raised my hand, started speaking, and my father cut me off after like 32 seconds. Cut me off, like didn't even let me finish my point, and said, "Lillian, honey, this is complicated. Let us handle the strategy." Vincent smiled, that arrogant smile he always had, and added, "Yeah, little sis, maybe you should focus on simpler things for now." I sat there the rest of the meeting feeling my blood boil, but staying quiet because I'd already learned that protesting only made me look dramatic or sensitive. I left that office and walked through the streets of Chicago for hours, literally hours, because I couldn't go home yet, couldn't face anyone. And while I was walking, something in me changed. It wasn't like a movie moment where there's inspirational music in the background. It was more like a cold, calculated decision. I thought, you know what? If they're not going to give me the chance to prove what I can do, I'm going to do it myself, and they won't even know it was me until it's too late. I had some savings. Not much, but something. And I'd inherited a bit of money from my grandmother when I was 21. In total, I had like $80,000, which I know sounds like a lot, but in the Chicago real estate world, it's basically nothing. Barely enough for a small down payment. I started researching properties, but not the obvious properties everyone was chasing, but the ones that people like my father and Vincent dismissed because they considered them too risky or in areas that weren't trendy yet. I spent months, literally months, walking through neighborhoods, talking to local residents, studying urban development patterns, analyzing demographic data. My family thought I was wasting my time, that I was in some kind of personal discovery phase or something. Stella asked me once if I was dating someone because I was never home, and when I told her I was working on a personal project, she rolled her eyes and changed the subject. I bought my first property with those $80,000. A small apartment building in Logan Square that needed work but had good bones, as they say in the business. I renovated it using all my remaining savings and part of the money I earned working part-time as a consultant for an independent real estate firm, something I also didn't tell my family about because I knew my father would see it as something insignificant. I rented out the apartments and started generating income. It wasn't much at first, but it was mine. It was something I had built without the Whitmore name, without my father's connections, without anything except my own work and vision. A year later, I met Sophia Tran at a real estate networking event. Sophia was like 29 years old at the time, was charismatic, super smart, and had that kind of energy that makes people trust you immediately. We were talking about the market and discovered we had very similar visions about where urban development in Chicago was headed. I told her about my property in Logan Square, and she told me about her own projects, and after like 3 hours of nonstop conversation, we basically decided right there that we should work together. I proposed something that I know sounded crazy at the time. I said, "What if we form our own firm? You'd be the public face. I'd work behind the scenes handling strategy and finance, and we build something real." Sophia looked at me like she was evaluating whether I was serious or not, and after a long moment said, "I'm in." We formed Tran and Partners like 6.5 years ago. We decided that Sophia would be the public CEO, the one who'd attend events, who'd do networking, who'd appear in press articles, while I'd be the silent partner, the strategist behind everything. There were several reasons for this decision, one of them being that I didn't want my family to find out what I was doing. Not yet, at least. I wanted to build something substantial first, something undeniable, before they knew it existed. I also knew that if my Whitmore last name was publicly associated with the firm, my father, I would probably try to interfere or sabotage or do some of those things that powerful men do when they feel someone's invading their territory. The first years were brutal. I'm not going to lie. I worked my consulting job during the day to pay my bills and then spent nights and weekends working on Tran and Partners. Sophia and I would meet in coffee shops, in my apartment, in her small office she'd rented, in a somewhat run-down building in Wicker Park. We'd analyze properties, develop investment strategies, look for investors who believed in our vision. It was exhausting but also incredibly exciting, because for the first time in my life I felt like I was building something that was completely mine. Something where my voice mattered, where my ideas weren't dismissed or ridiculed. Our strategy was different from Whitmore Enterprises. While they focused on massive luxury developments and high-profile commercial properties, we specialized in sustainable urban development and community revitalization. We'd buy buildings in emerging neighborhoods, renovate them in ways that preserved the neighborhood's character but improved quality of life, and work with local governments and community organizations to ensure our projects benefited existing residents, not just wealthy buyers. It was a business model that required more work and patience, but generated long-term relationships and a solid reputation. Meanwhile, my family life continued as always. Sunday dinners were torture. Honestly. My father and Vincent talked about their deals, their successes, their expansion plans, and I'd sit there nodding and smiling when appropriate, but basically being invisible. Stella talked about her social events and her vacations in Europe. My mother, who died when I was 16, had always been the only one who really saw me, and without her there, it was like there was no one in that house who understood who I really was. Sometimes my father would ask me what I was doing with my life, and I'd tell him I worked as a consultant, that I was exploring options, and he'd give me that look of disappointment I knew so well and then change the subject. The ironic thing is that as Tran and Partners grew, my family started mocking me more for not being involved in Whitmore Enterprises. Vincent would make comments like, "When are you going to stop playing adult and join the real family business?" Or my father would say things like, "It's a shame Lillian doesn't have the business instinct you have, Vincent. Would have been useful to have another Whitmore in the firm. Every comment hurt but also motivated me more. I saved those comments in my memory, used them as fuel to work harder, to be smarter, to build something that would eventually shut them up in the most spectacular way possible. After 3 years, Tran and Partners had grown exponentially. We'd completed 12 major projects, had a property portfolio valued at almost $50 million, and had won several awards from the city for our work in sustainable community development. Sophia was incredible. As the face of the company, appeared in Chicago Tribune and Crain's articles, gave talks at conferences, and always kept my identity as the strategic partner secret just as we'd agreed. When people asked her about her team, she'd talk about our analysts, our project directors, but never mentioned my name specifically. My family obviously knew about Tran and Partners because it was impossible to be in the Chicago real estate world and not know about them at this point. I remember a dinner where my father mentioned he'd heard about this new firm that was doing interesting things, and Vincent immediately dismissed it, saying it was just a passing fad, that sustainable community development wasn't profitable long-term, that Sophia Tran was playing at being a social entrepreneur, but eventually the market would put her in her place. I sat there listening to him criticize my company, my work, my vision, and said, nothing. I just smiled and took another sip of wine, while inside I was thinking, you'll see. Like 6 months ago, things came to a critical point. The Illinois Real Estate Association announced its annual gala, that massive event where all the industry big shots gather, and Tran and Partners had been nominated for the Innovation and Excellence Award, which is basically the Oscar of the Chicago real estate world. It was a huge award, the kind of recognition that solidifies your position as an industry leader. When Sophia told me about the nomination, she asked if I thought it was time to reveal my role in the company. I told her yes, that if we won the award, that would be the perfect moment. My family would obviously attend the gala because my father was a prominent member of the association and Whitmore Enterprises had won multiple awards over the years. I told them I'd also attend, and my father seemed surprised because normally I avoided those events. Vincent made a sarcastic comment about how I was finally showing interest in the real business world. The night of the gala, I arrived alone. Wore a simple but elegant black dress. Nothing too flashy because I didn't want attention before the right moment. The hotel ballroom was impressive, like giant chandeliers and tables decorated with expensive flowers, all very ostentatious like these things are. I saw my father and Vincent at their table with several Whitmore Enterprises executives. Stella was there too with her husband. They greeted me briefly but then went back to their conversations, basically ignored me as always. I sat at the Tran and Partners table, which was on the other side of the ballroom, with Sophia and the rest of our team. Sophia squeezed my hand and asked if I was ready, and I told her I'd never been more ready for anything in my life. The awards ceremony began after dinner. There were several awards before ours, and with each announcement my heart beat faster. Finally came the moment for the Innovation and Excellence Award. The presenter talked about the nominees, mentioned various achievements of each firm, and when he talked about Tran and Partners, he highlighted our focus on sustainable development and how we'd transformed entire neighborhoods while maintaining community integrity. And then he said, and the winner is Tran and Partners. The room exploded in applause. Sophia stood up and looked at me, and I nodded. She walked to the stage and accepted the award, gave a brief speech thanking our team, our investors, the communities we'd worked with, and then she said something that made the entire room go silent. She said, but there's someone I really need to thank tonight, someone without whom none of this would have been possible. The true mastermind behind Tran and Partners, my partner and co-founder, has been working in the shadows for 6 years, and I think it's time the world knows who she really is. Lillian Whitmore. Could you join me on stage? The silence that followed was surreal. I could feel every eye in the room turning toward me. I stood up. My legs were shaking a bit, but I forced myself to walk confidently to the stage. I passed by my family's table and saw their faces. My father with his mouth literally open, Vincent with an expression of complete disbelief. Stella confused, trying to process what she'd just heard. I went up on stage and Sophia hugged me and passed me the microphone. I looked at the audience, took a deep breath, and started speaking. I said, "Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, everyone. Many of you are probably surprised, especially my family sitting over there who I just saw had the most priceless reaction. I laughed a bit and the audience laughed too, breaking the tension. I continued, for the last 6 years I've been building Tran and Partners alongside Sophia, working behind the scenes because I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove to myself that I could build something meaningful without the Whitmore name, without my father's connections, without anyone giving me a chance out of obligation or pity. And I did it. We did it. We built a firm that's not only financially successful, but really makes a difference in the communities we serve. I paused, looked directly at where my father was sitting. I said, I especially want to thank the people who told me I wasn't smart enough, that I didn't have the business instinct, that I should focus on simpler things. That rejection, that lack of faith, was the motivation I needed to work twice as hard, to be twice as strategic, to build something they couldn't ignore or dismiss. So thank you for underestimating me. It was the best gift you could have given me. The room exploded in applause. Sophia and I raised the award together, and then came down from the stage. I was immediately surrounded by people from the industry congratulating me, asking about future projects, wanting meetings. Like 30 minutes passed before I could breathe, and when there was finally a moment of calm, I saw my father walking toward me. He looked, I don't know how to describe it, like devastated but also impressed, confused but also proud maybe. It was hard to read. He took me to the terrace where there were fewer people and less noise. He stood there for a moment without saying anything, and honestly, I didn't know what to say either. Finally, he spoke, said, Lillian, I didn't know. I had no idea that. He stopped, trying to find the words. I told him, I know, Dad. That was the point. You didn't want to know. You never really asked what I was doing. You never thought I could be building something important, because you'd already decided I wasn't capable. He shook his head, said, You were right. I underestimated you. Underestimated your talent, your vision, your capability. And I'm sorry. It was the first time in my life I heard my father apologize for something related to me, and I'm not going to lie. It felt good, but it also felt late. Like too late. To change all those dinners where he ignored me, all those times he made me feel invisible, all those years where Vincent received all his support and attention while I received crumbs. I told him, I appreciate the apology. Really. But it doesn't change the fact that I had to build all this without you. Without your support. Without you believing in me. And honestly, I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I did it alone. My father nodded. Seemed like he was processing something internally. After another moment of silence, he said something that took me completely by surprise. He said, I want to make it up to you. I want to make things right. Whitmore Enterprises should acquire Tran and Partners. We can merge the companies. You and Sophia would have top executive positions. We could combine our resources and build something even bigger together. I looked at him trying to determine if he was serious. I asked him, Are you offering me a buyout? He said, It's more than that. It's an opportunity to finally work together, as family, to combine the Whitmore legacy with your innovative vision. It sounded good in theory, you know, like the perfect movie ending where the family reconciles and everyone works together happily. But I knew it wasn't that simple. I knew that if I accepted that offer, I'd be giving up control of something I'd built specifically to be independent of my family, of my father, of all that. I told him, Dad, I appreciate the offer, really. But no, Tran and Partners is mine. It's Sophia's. It's our team's. I don't want to merge it with Whitmore Enterprises. I don't want my success to become part of your empire. I need this to remain mine. He looked hurt. Said, Wouldn't you even consider? But I interrupted him. I told him, I spent years wanting your approval, wanting you to see me, wanting to be part of your world. But I built my own world now, and it's better than I ever imagined. I don't need to be part of Whitmore Enterprises to be successful or to validate my worth. I already proved it, to myself and to anyone who doubted me. My father stood there for a long moment, and then nodded slowly. He said, I understand. And while it hurts, I also respect you for it. You're stronger than I thought. Stronger than I was at your age, probably. I'm sorry for not seeing it before. We stood there on the terrace a moment longer, the noise from the gala filtering in from inside, Chicago's lights shining around us. It wasn't a perfect movie-type reconciliation. We didn't hug crying or anything like that, but it was something. It was a beginning, maybe, or at least an acknowledgement of everything that had happened. I went back inside, and the rest of the night was a blur of celebrations, interviews with journalists, more congratulations. Vincent avoided me the whole rest of the event. I think he was too much in shock or too proud to admit that his invisible sister had built something so significant. Stella hugged me and told me she was impressed, though, honestly, I don't think she fully understood the magnitude of what had happened. But the gesture was nice anyway. 6 months have passed since the gala and things have changed, but not completely. My relationship with my father is better, I guess. He makes an effort to ask me about Tran and partners at Sunday dinners now, though I can see it still costs him to accept that I don't work for him. Vincent and I basically don't talk. I think his ego is too hurt to process it yet. Tran and partners is growing faster than ever. Now that my role is public, we've received more media attention, more interested investors, more opportunities. Last week, I was in my office. Our new office, because we finally moved to a nice space in the Loop, and Sophia came in with a proposal for a massive mixed-use development project in Bronzeville. It was exactly the kind of project we'd always dreamed of doing, like transformative for the community but also incredibly challenging. While we reviewed the numbers and strategy, I thought about how 7 years ago I was sitting in that Whitmore Enterprises meeting being ignored and cut off, feeling like I'd never be enough. And now I'm here, running my own successful firm, making decisions that affect entire neighborhoods, being recognized as a leader in my industry. I'm not going to say everything is perfect now or that I've completely forgiven my family for all those years of making me feel invisible. It still hurts when I think about all the time I wasted seeking their approval, all the potential I could have developed earlier if someone had believed in me. But I'm also grateful in a strange way, because that rejection forced me to be stronger, more independent, more determined. I built something completely mine, something no one can take away from me or minimize or say I only achieved because of my last name. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if my father had given me a real chance at Whitmore Enterprises from the beginning. Would it have been easier? Definitely. Would it have been better? Honestly, I don't know. I probably would have ended up being a junior executive under Vincent's shadow, working on projects he approved, making decisions my father validated. Instead, I'm CEO of my own firm, making decisions that reflect my values, building something that really matters to me. The other night, I was having dinner with Sophia, celebrating that we'd closed the deal in Bronzeville, and she raised her glass and said, "Let's toast to being underestimated." Because it gave us the freedom to build something incredible without anyone's expectations except our own. And I toasted thinking, yes, exactly that. Being the invisible daughter, the middle daughter no one took seriously, turned out to be the best possible position to build an empire without anyone even noticing until it was too late to stop me.